at the Student Perspectives focus group, I asked 26 students across 2 different groups to think about what they found most useful about study days, whether you call them study days or self-directed learning days, how they thought study days should fit in with the whole programme, and then 3 big questions: what should we start doing, what should we stop doing, and what should we continue doing? And the overwhelming feeling about what is most useful is that students felt that they needed time for those days to be about what they need to prioritise, what really matters for them in that moment, what do they need to do. And predominantly they were talking about subject knowledge, so they felt that it was really important that those days were time where they could kind of catch up on work that they felt was going to plug some gaps in subject knowledge that had started to come up on their placements. Related to that, they felt that study days at the start of the year are not useful. So if they're not actually in placement, having study days before they've actually gone into their school, they found really not that useful at all, because they're not using it as time to catch up on anything, particularly when their assignments are already in. It's just not necessarily something that's very productive. So there's an issue there about timing of study days. In terms of what we should start doing, the students really liked it when the tasks were related to placements, and gave them experience of planning, so they were working on things that they already have to do. So I guess that idea that it needed to be really productive, that was very important. They really value being able to follow up, so not having tasks that are kind of left hanging. They really think it's important that they get some feedback. Most of them said that they wanted tutor feedback, but they also thought it was really important to be able to talk with peers. There was also a suggestion that 2 or 3 students talked about having a more career focus to the study days, which once they suggested it, other students would say, oh yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So time where they could actually work on the applications for jobs, actually start looking at job applications, or plugging the gaps in things that they've not done. And this might raise questions about how we plan in primary sessions as well. So in terms of what to stop doing, there was a strong feeling that having things that duplicate professional issues really isn't helpful. So doing things on behaviour management or classroom management, they found really not useful because it gets covered. So it was very much a focus on, please focus on subject knowledge. There was lots of issues around ICT, and when too much of it was online. So I guess there's a question there about balancing. How do we balance how much should be online and how much should be face-to-face, how much should be paper-based? So the use of Facebook, Twitter and Moodle stressed some students out because they could actually see when other people were effectively ahead of their work. They were posting their responses, whereas they weren't ready to, and they found this quite stressful. Long reading lists that didn't have a specific task that was structured related to it, they found also quite stressful. Things that we're already doing and they want us to do more of, more micro-teachers, more Google Hangouts where the tutor is present, where we give the readings very specifically timed towards the assignments. 2 weeks is not enough time, but 4 weeks is too much. They were very specific that 3 weeks is absolutely ideal. Allowing students to select from a range of tasks, a range of readings, have the opportunity to be really creative. So some of the students talked about how they really enjoyed being able to create a poster of things that they'd read and then bring that in, because it meant that they were engaging with the text in a different way and not always having to work on IT. So doing posters and things like that, they really liked. When doing a portfolio, they liked the fact that they could pick tasks, but they found it they did recognise that you can't necessarily provide feedback if they are picking, say, out of 14 different tasks over the year. How will they get feedback on that? So they like the idea of a portfolio, but they did want to make sure that that came with feedback. So, key messages then. A strong sense that self-directed study should enable trainees to work on subject knowledge, because they all have their own gaps, they all have their own areas that they feel they need to develop, so they feel this is really critical. They really value feedback from peers and tutors. The third key message, they want to personalise what they work on and how they do it. Fourth key message, be careful of the number of IT systems that are used, give them that balance between working online, in paper, face-to-face presentation of what they've done. And finally, they wanted time to talk more fluidly about their experiences in school. Some even suggested, so one phrased it as unstructured, structured talk time, where they were actually able to talk about what they'd done over the previous week. One said, we only really come in on a Friday because we can go to the pub, because it's going to the pub where you connect with your peers, and that's when you share your ideas and your experiences and feel better about what you're doing. So in terms of thinking ahead, there are lots of things that are coming out, but immediately thoughts for me about how we create challenge, how do we ensure tasks push our students and challenge them, but also are really meaningful. How do we get them to problem solve? Can we introduce the idea of scenarios so they have to think more about how they plan and how they use the subject sessions? When are we going to time these sessions? Do we time them to build on what's been done in the session, or are we using it as a lead into what will come into a session? How do we connect subject pedagogy, research, and what they're doing on placement? So there's some big questions that come up, but the overwhelming feeling is that students want these self-directed time to be personalised and enable them to feel more confident with their subject.